Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 2022 governor elections and discussing the Democratic Party's victory across many key and important states as we look ahead to 2024 and we look and really reflect on what happened in 2022, ultimately getting a general idea about the way that midterm election went, especially given that it defied many expectations, largely in favor of Democrats on election night on November 8th. Now, the topic of this video, as you can tell from the title, is about how Democrats did exceptionally well, and it's something that you're starting to see form as a common theme when we look at the election results for 2022. And quite frankly, it makes a lot of sense. Democrats are on track to expand their Senate majority, the narrowest Senate majority possible in the United States. The House barely went to the Republicans. Kevin McCarthy was boasting potentially a 50 to 60 seat pickup. He's getting at most 10 seats from the Democrats. On the governor level, Democrats did exceptionally well. They did very well on state legislative races all around the country, on abortion referendums, on marijuana referendums. The Democratic Party had a very good midterm election. So that will be the story that will be told. The expectations were defied heavily by the Democratic Party, and it was quite an impressive result, especially given the current circumstance of inflation, the economy, etc. The numbers don't exactly favor the Democrats, but the results absolutely do. So in this discussion / analysis of the key governor races that we're talking about, we're pretty much going to be looking at all of the races that Democrats did quite well in and won in 2022. We start off with Pennsylvania, where Josh Shapiro won by about 15 points across the state. That was pretty significant. A very solid victory for the incumbent attorney general, now the governor-elect of Pennsylvania. But this race, and many of the races I'm showing you at different points in time, were actually expected to go to the GOP at one point. So Pennsylvania was in that time frame back after Glenn Youngkin's victory that many people, including myself, significantly overestimated the Republican Party's ability to win in Pennsylvania, had Pennsylvania, even at the start of this year, as a lean red state on the governor level. This is not the Senate map. This is the governor map. Pennsylvania was a lean red state. Michigan was tilt red. Wisconsin was lead red. You'll see why I mentioned that in specific, but all around at different points in time, I had the Republicans ahead in many of these states, and so did many other political pundits. But fast forward to November 2022, the Democrats win Pennsylvania by 15. Even on election eve, I had Wisconsin as a red state. I truly thought that Tim Michels was on track to victory, but however, the voters in Wisconsin shocked the country. I think this was one of the most shocking results of that election night, but it still fits into this whole narrative that has been forming as a result of Democrats winning consistently. That Democrats practically ran the table. They won practically everywhere they needed to, with very, very few exceptions, and it was something that extended well beyond the governor elections. It wasn't an abysmal House showing, but a very good governor showing. No, it was good all across the board, and the House result was extremely expected, but I will say that Democrats might be very happy about where we stand today. Looking at the state of America, the state of our House composition on both sides of the aisle, Democrats are probably not as unhappy as they might have been if this was a 2010 or 2014 type of midterm. But not only did Tony Evers not lose, but he ended up winning by about 4 points across the state. In Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer actually expanded off her 2018 margin victory. Absolutely shocking and substantial for Gretchen Whitmer. She blew Tudor Dixon out of the water, won by over 10 points across the state. In Arizona, this was also a shocker too. Katie Hobbs defeated Carrie Lake in this state. Katie Hobbs did not even debate Carrie Lake. She refused to, and she was vilified by the right wing, by the mainstream. Overall, Katie Hobbs did not run what many people thought was an extremely strong campaign, but ultimately, she came out ahead and defeated Carrie Lake on election night, as did many other down-ballot Democrats. In Kansas, Laura Kelly won her gubernatorial race there. I also expected this race to go to the Republican Party. I think Derek Schmidt was a more moderate Republican. He was someone who could take the reins of the state of Kansas. He definitely was not the most well-liked, most well-received. I don't think many Republicans in Kansas really are, but I will say that Laura Kelly definitely surprised me in her victory, winning re-election as a Democrat, and what many people were expecting, again, to be a red wave year. So she won by about 2.1% across Kansas. Quite important and quite substantial, to say the least. Looking at Maine, Janet Mills, Paula Page. Paula Page was looking to get to the governor's office yet again. He had served as a 2-term governor, had to take a 4-year term off, decided to run for re-election again for that 3rd term, ended up losing by about 13 points, a complete and total rejection of the Republican Party in a state that Biden only won by single digits in the last election. In New Mexico, you found Michelle Lewin Grisham, who was plagued by her own scandals. Scandals dealing with a number of things that I do not think can be thoroughly discussed in the topic of this video, but I would encourage you to take a look at that information because it is extremely, extremely important. But at the end of the day, she ended up winning in New Mexico. And I think that what we have found here is that partisanship, even in a state that used to be a swing state like New Mexico, ultimately carries the Democrats over the finish line. There also is the factor that New Mexico is a state that is unapologetically pro-choice, unapologetically pro-gay marriage, unapologetically, pro a lot of what the Democratic Party stands for. So when they see a Democrat on the ballot, realistically, it's not too shocking to see this result. Though Michelle Lujan Grisham didn't win by the margin that Joe Biden did in the last election, 10% in the presidential, she still ended up winning by a pretty significant amount, especially considering, again, that at different points in time, Republicans were expected to win in that state. Definitely something to think about. I don't think I ever had New Mexico as a lean red state, but I definitely had it as lean blue on election day. What did it end up being? Likely blue. So overall, an improvement for Republicans. In the Oregon gubernatorial race, Tina Kotek ended up winning. This is one that I personally did expect, but I will say many people did not. I think when you looked at the expectations on the betting markets on FiveThirtyEight, you would find a general conclusion that, hold on a second, the Republicans are going to potentially win in Oregon. We can actually pull up the FiveThirtyEight projection for the gubernatorial races because you can see here that on election day, right, what did we have? Some pretty solid calls, but Arizona was red. Right, in the Oregon gubernatorial race, Kotek took the lead, but when you look over at the history of it, the Republicans actually maintained a lead for about a month. A narrow one, but still a lead nonetheless. And when you look at the light model, which had to do strictly with polling data, you would actually find that lead would expand. It would narrow up again with Classic. It would narrow up again with Deluxe. But ultimately, Tina Kotek definitely did a bit of shocking to some Republicans in Oregon and potentially some Republicans all across the nation. So when we look at our competitive races in, or at least what was expected to be target states for the GOP at the start of the last election, what we found was that Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, the blue wall went solid for the Democrats. In a very interesting fashion, you had Pennsylvania being the most solid for the Democrats, Michigan being the second most solid, and then Wisconsin being the third most solid, but altogether, no margins closer than about a few percentage points, and ones as wide as nearly 15 points. Definitely something to think about. In a year that was better for the GOP on the national average, the generic ballot actually went to the GOP by about 4 points nationwide. What do you find? Arizona still goes blue. Kansas still goes blue. Maine still goes blue. New Mexico still goes blue. Oregon still goes blue. All of these races that were expected to be extremely competitive, guess what? The Democrats practically won every single one. Now, this isn't to say that Republicans did not have any victories. When you look at some of the races, they won in Georgia, right? They won in Nevada. Joe Lombardo defeated Steve Sisolak by about 1.5%. And in the state of Texas, Greg Abbott ended up winning. But realistically, Georgia and Texas we knew. Nevada was a toss-up. I personally said that Nevada was going to go red, but many people thought that Democrats would still have a fighting chance. And realistically, they always did. But just looking at the final results, what did we find? The GOP had very few victories. Their only real one was in Nevada, and even then they lost the governor race. They lost the Senate race that coincided with it and lost 3 out of the 4 House elections there. So it was not a particularly wonderful night for the Nevada GOP. I don't think even for the national GOP, even though they did win control of the House of Representatives. But altogether, what we found here is that Democrats ran the table. They won in a lot of close and competitive races that will have down-ballot ramifications for 2024. Pennsylvania will have a Democratic governor, a popular one likely, given Josh Shapiro's ability to appeal to the masses, not only in this election, but as Attorney General. In terms of his favorability ratings, in terms of the way that voters perceived him, Josh Shapiro can be a huge advocate for President Biden in 2024. Tony Evers can as well. Voters chose him more than they chose Biden. There absolutely were Trump-Evers voters, and this election proved it. In Michigan, you also could find Trump-Whitmer voters, both in 2018 and 2022. These 3 Democratic candidates, number one, safeguard the electoral college votes from these states should the Democrats win it in 2024. And number 2, add to Joe Biden's political reelection campaign. And I'm saying this because everybody expects him to run for reelection. Personally, I do as well. I think it would be the smartest move by the National Democratic Party. But overall, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, this is a good look for Democrats, and there's no other way to spin it, especially given that these are the states that arguably some Democrats care about the most. Arizona is a very good sign as you head into 2022. We've seen this narrative taking shape out of Maricopa County and other parts of the state where you're saying, hey, what you're going to find is that the Republicans are going to dwindle in population in Arizona. Democrats are going to grow. Election year after election year after election year, it's going to get bluer. And what happened? In 2016, it narrowed up. In 2018, it flipped blue. In 2020, it flipped blue for the first time since 92. And in 2022, it flipped blue as well. On the governor level, the Senate went in 2018, so did the House. House maintained in 2020. The presidential flipped, and now the governor flipped. Arizona is going from a point where Republicans were dominating. Even if you look at the state legislative results, I would encourage you to look, because Democrats now have a very realistic chance at winning control of two chambers in 2024, which would be shocking. Huge for the Democratic Party, very, very big, because they went from being absolutely in the minority now to being down by maybe 1 or 2 seats out of about 60 seats across the state. So overall, Arizona is consistently trending leftward, and the margin of victory for Katie Hobbs is similar to that of which Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that it is larger than President Biden's in the last election. Kansas is the same thing, arguably, though. Kansas went to Donald Trump by about 14 points. Maine, though, an improvement for Janet Mills, better than what Biden did. In New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham underperformed Biden, but she had scandals that definitely weighed her down. And in Oregon, Tina Kotek was just too closely associated with a very unpopular Democratic governor, but ultimately, she still ended up winning. So in looking at many of these races, I personally am disappointed in the Republican Party's election performance. On Election Day, I really thought that Republicans were going to get 29 seats to the Democrats' 21. Back after Glenn Youngkin's victory, I had the map at 33 Republican seats to the Democrats' 17. Some of these seats that I predicted going to the GOP did not even become states of importance for 2022, did not even become states that were viewed as extremely, extremely important. Because what we can do here is go ahead and change the results. What I mean by that is we are going to give the Democrats and Republicans the seats and states that they ended up winning anyway. So, for instance, in Ohio and Georgia, those states are going red. But what we are finding is that beyond many of them, you really can't see it. Democrats are at 17 right now, but where else did they win? Well, they won in Oregon. We know that much. They won in the state of Arizona. We've been talking about that. Let's characterize Arizona as a blue state. Arizona went blue. New Mexico went blue. Colorado went blue. Illinois went blue. Connecticut went blue. Rhode Island went blue. Maine went blue. Pennsylvania went blue. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Kansas. Republicans won the state of Florida and Nevada. So looking at this map, it is actually closer in favor of the Democrats than where it was after 2018, than where it was after 2020, than where it was after the expectations had gone in from 538. Republicans were at a better advantage. But right now, it's 26-24. 26-24 in favor of the Republican Party. That is a huge change, and you can see where Democrats really, really shine through in these midterm elections. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, right? The other other Democratic candidates need to take notes from all of these candidates. They need to avoid, making the mistakes that Kathy Hochul made in the state of New York, or making the mistakes that Steve Sisolak made in the state of Nevada. If you were having a Democrat win one race, arguably, you should be able to get another Democrat to also win another down-ballot race. The same can be applied to Republicans. Brian Kemp, should be in a position where Herschel Walker could have ridden his coattails. But Herschel Walker is so exceptionally crazy and draining to our political discussion that voters simply do not like him. You can see it in the AARP poll that we covered yesterday, talking about the brand new nonpartisan poll in the state. What you found was that Walker was simply disliked, unelectable. And I think what you have found too across many of these key races is that almost all of the Republicans were handpicked by Donald Trump. They were chosen and propped up to be the nominees for governor, and almost every single one of them lost. Doug Mastriano was endorsed by Trump in Pennsylvania's GOP primary. Tim Michels was endorsed by Trump in Wisconsin's GOP primary. Tudor Dixon was endorsed by Trump in the Michigan gubernatorial Republican primary. In the state of Arizona, Kari Lake was handpicked and chosen by Donald Trump for the Republican primary. Looking at all of these states, Donald Trump's influence cannot be undersold or understated. Donald Trump completely shaped the narrative of these midterm gubernatorial races, but largely in favor of the Democratic Party, whether he liked it or not. The Democrats did well in these states due to a number of factors: down-ballot ramifications, candidate quality, fundraising numbers, past voting history, whatever it might be. But realistically, what we can take away from where we are and what we are looking at. From Pennsylvania to Arizona to Kansas to Maine to New Mexico, the Democrats have done well because they knew how to run this cycle. Republicans, quite frankly, dropped the ball in almost every single important race. They nominated crazies. They nominated extremists. They nominated people who denied the existence of COVID-19 or denied the existence of the January 6th insurrection. These are things that voters do not positively respond to. And voters clearly made it, or I guess, not trying to repeat my words here, but made it clear that they will not be electing that type of Republican. It was best said by Governor Chris Sununu when he went on CNN after the 2022 midterms and said that voters made it clear that they care about the issue of inflation and they care about the rising costs at the gas pump, at the supermarket, whatever it might be. But those are problems that can be fixed in the future, and that right now, you don't need crazy to fix those problems. People are more comfortable, as we can now see in the governor and Senate elections, are more comfortable with Democrats leading the country than I would say they otherwise might have been had these social issues not been arisen. But I will say that whole understanding that voters are now okay with Democrats handling the issues because they believe that inflation can be tackled later, or they believe that the economy is not the fault of President Joe Biden or the Democratic Party. And that's something that, quite frankly, benefits the Democratic Party. Altogether, Democrats practically mopped the table with the Republican Party in all of these key and important battleground states. It'll be fascinating to see as we traverse our next few weeks going into the runoff election and then going straight full force into the 2024 presidential election. It'll be very interesting to watch. But altogether, the main takeaway here is that Democrats did exceptionally well, but a lot of it had to do with ignorance and malpractice by the national GOP. But realistically, what can you do when that is the current state of your party, when that is, quite frankly, the future of your party, and potentially the 2024 presidential nominee for the GOP? So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server if you go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.